Hello, welcome to the Rooted Souls podcast. My name is Becca Spirit and I will be your hostess. Here I am offering you talks on spirituality and self-development that bring you back down to earth. Bridging the gap between ethereal ideas and mindful realism. These talks illuminate the magic in the mundane and facilitate discernment in the far out for a life rooted in wisdom. This podcast is for conscious seekers who are just opening up to spirituality and personal growth, or those of you who've been on that journey for a while and you're realizing that things just are not what they seemed at first, or for those who are anywhere in between. I am so glad you're here. I invite you to either take a walk or sit down and relax with something nice and warm to drink and just let this wash over you. Take what resonates, leave the rest, and just know that this is my gift to you. I hope that it serves you. I am so glad you're here, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello, today I have Lorna Stell here with me. We are going to be discussing the wisdom of your body and your inner voice. Lorna is an intuitive healing guide and intuition facilitator based in Salem, Massachusetts. Her specialty is helping empaths and highly sensitive people shift from fear and stress to living from their inner wisdom for more ease, pleasure, and clarity. After a chronic illness flare-up turned spiritual awakening in 2018, Lorna realized she had an inner knowing that wanted to guide her towards vitality and unconditional self-love. It's been a continual journey in that direction ever since. Today, she empowers her clients to deepen their relationship with their intuition so they can release the beliefs, unprocessed emotions, and physical symptoms holding them back from the life they desire. Ultimately, her work is all about love of the self and love of the body. Lorna, I'm so delighted to have you here. Lorna and I met in January of 2020. I was actually giving tarot card readings at a Boston businesswomen event, and I was lucky enough to have Lorna come to my table.
Yay. Yeah, well, it's so great to be here. That was, oh gosh, that might have been the only tarot reading I've received in person, actually. And it was a really special time just connecting with you, very like synchronistic, I think. And yeah, we were just talking about like, what was that reading? And it was actually helping me to release a lot of resistance I was having at the conception of my current intuitive work. I had a lot of like mind worries and like stories and like reasons it wasn't going to work and all these things, and you were like helping me to see through all that noise, and I'm still grateful today. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. So should I go into the work I'm doing now?
Yes, please share with us. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So so kind of what you helped me to start doing actually through releasing that resistance is, like you said in the bio, like helping my clients to connect really deeply with this inner wisdom that they have. And my journey now has become like, actually I'm doing that alongside my clients. Like it's coming to a place of living from that inner wisdom rather than allowing the conditioning of the thinking mind to guide all of our decisions, listening to all of our fears as truth. And so ultimately what I found is that the more we listen to our inner wisdom, intuition, inner being, whatever you like to call it, that is your source of unconditional love, peace, presence. Oftentimes it's joy. And that I've found is a really beautiful place to live life from. And it's great for your nervous system. And so the whole journey for me started actually with like, well, as you said, a chronic illness flare up. And that to me, like what I found is that people living in chronic illness, like their bodies are at a point where it's like I have to tell you something needs to change and I'm not getting through any other way. And really that's what was happening for me. Like I needed some big changes. And I sat with that inner knowing, and I've been following that since then, and finding more ways to actually have conversations with that inner knowing, bringing to it like all of my worries, all of my what ifs, all the fears, helping it or allowing it to help me make decisions, all those things. Um, and I haven't found an area of life yet that it doesn't touch and heal and completely transform, the more that we allow it. So really the journey is like the allowing part and the trusting part. So that's really the journey that my clients go on with me. So some of them come to me with chronic illnesses, like whether they're diagnosed or like more mystery symptoms. Some of them are coming to me with like really active minds, like a lot of overthinking, perfectionism, analysis paralysis. And inevitably, all parts of us are connected anyway. So like they're probably still experiencing that in their body. It may not be showing up as chronic illness, but when we get down to that place of inner wisdom, we are getting into that really deep truth and seeing through like what are actually the lies that I've been believing just because like people have told me I should be a certain way, or there are certain things that like just need to be done a certain way based on what the way our parents taught us to be, or the way quote unquote society is. So really finding what your own truth is and living from that place, and that is what brings the really deep healing, whether it's for your emotions, your mind, your body, all parts of you. So that's it in a nutshell.
I find that people come to me with the same issues, and I consider myself a self-development junkie.
Yeah.
And I'm always delighted when I find new tools. It always feels like I've done everything. And then I try something new. So just actually before our call, Lorna walked me through what she calls a vitality activation, which for me, it was a guided intuition exploration. And it was super relaxing, and it was really delightful and easy. I think a lot of times I find clients struggle to slow down to hear their inner voice, or it feels lonely or just uncharted territory. And what I loved about what you did for me, Lorna, and what you clearly offer your clients is providing a space where just relax, I'll do it for you. And you can just lean into your inner voice, giving people a permission slip to stop doing the work, stop trying to analyze it, and just let them lie down, and you walk them through it. And it was delightful. So thank you for that gift. And thank you for letting me have a little peek into what you do with your work. What are some other tools that people you think could do day to day to practice using their inner voice moment to moment?
Yeah. Well, I love that we got to have that experience together, like that guided connection with your intuition, because that's what I do as well. Like I do that solo. And it's often, it's funny, like I started out saying like, I need to meditate every morning for however many minutes. And now it's become like little pockets of my day. Like I just feel called to it when that resistance comes up, or a fear, or whatever it is. So in those times, what I do, actually, there's a lot of different ways to connect with your inner voice. Like it can be sitting down and meditating, like having this internal conversation of asking questions, receiving answers. It could also be having that conversation through a journal where you can write out those questions and write out the answers as they come. Um, Lately, I've started doing this verbally. So it's really fun to go out for a very long walk sometimes. And I'll just like start a voice memo. And, people might think I'm on a phone call, which is totally fine. So I'm speaking those questions and those answers out loud. And another way I think is really fun is just to do those things that you notice in daily life where you don't really need your mind for it. So for me, I used to have this really big like food prepping routine that was like 1 or 2 hours a week, just like chopping a bunch of stuff, whatever. And I would notice I would receive all kinds of clarity from my intuition doing that because I wasn't thinking about anything. And it could be other stuff that's creative too. Like if you like to paint, if you like to dance, if you like to, even it can just be like connections with other beings. If you like to lay in the grass, like connect with the trees. If you like to hang out with your cat, like you can connect with your inner voice anytime that your mind isn't active. So the key really is understanding, like practicing the way to quiet your mind. And I've heard people say that it's impossible. I don't believe that anymore. And you saw in our experience together, it's as simple as breathing, right? Like, would you say that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting to know the difference between intuition and thought.
Yeah.
And, I've had clients ask me questions like, how do you know if it's intuition or fear? Or, what is the gut instinct? And, there is so much nuance between a trauma response or, a conditioned idea or an inner knowing. And what I tend to say, and I'm curious what your thought is that knowing is gentle, it's peaceful, it's expansive. And even if it's something that a reality we don't like or a fact we don't like, there's an expansive-ness to it. It doesn't feel so contractive. It's even if it's bad news, it feels a lighter sensation. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Ooh, I was getting like tingles in my arms as you were saying that, which is like another, for those who are listening, that's a beautiful sign too of like your inner knowing showing up. I would completely agree with that. Like I've gotten the same question too. Like when we say intuition, sometimes people just like out in the wider world define that many different ways. So for me, that's why I also throw out like, it's your inner being, it's your inner voice, it's your inner wisdom, it's your divine guidance, it's your connection to source. That's the way I see it. So connecting with that, and you can like test this out. Like you don't have to like take my word for it, but what I've found, what all my clients have found is that it's your source again of like unconditional love and presence and peace. And there's often this like joyfulness, just like a peace with all that is, no matter what. So our minds might be reeling about, but this is wrong, I don't like this, I'm dissatisfied with this. Your inner voice, I'm willing to bet you will never be dissatisfied. And that might sound impossible. Like it might be like, that doesn't make any sense. And you're right. Like the inner voice is not logical in the way our minds want it to be. So I would agree, like when your inner knowing is showing up, notice how it feels in your body. Like it's a very somatic experience. When your intuition tells you, for example, this story is coming up for me. I had a cancer scare during COVID. So let's talk about that.
Wow.
So,
yes. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I noticed, and this is a really great piece of evidence for me of like what the mind sounds and feels like, what the intuition sounds and feels like. So what happened for me during COVID was like a lot of people actually, I ended up like traveling away from home and staying with my parents for a while. And for those who don't know, my parents are like many states away from me. So I was like far away from home, far away from like everything really. And I remember like just like being in their house and being like, my shoulder feels weird. It was like this like weird pinching sensation in the skin of my shoulder. And with my history of chronic illness, it's easy for me to spin out about stuff like that and be like, oh my God, it's all over. So having that sensation, I was just like, what am I going to do about this? And I knew, and this was like early on in my practice still, like this was 2020. So I wasn't as deep as I am now, but I noticed, the first thing I thought to do is like, there's nothing else I can do. I'm just going to ask my inner wisdom about it. Like I can't go see a doctor right now. So I remember laying on the floor of my bedroom and just asking the question, being like, is this cancer? Yes or no? And first I heard yes. And I first heard yes because again, like I wasn't as practiced at the time, but it was such a valuable experience because I could feel the difference when that yes came. It was immediate panic. And so it didn't feel like what we're talking about, this like well of deep peace and like embodied truth. It was like, the answer yes, and then feeling like, oh my God, it's all over. Like, what am I going to do? Mind spinning out immediately. And I decided, okay, like I still can't do anything about it right now. So I'm going to breathe and I'm going to come back to it tomorrow. So I came back to it tomorrow and I asked the same question. And is this cancer? Yes or no? And I heard no. And I felt that peace. And so some of you could be thinking like, well, maybe it was peaceful because the answer is no. But like, again, try it in your own life, see what the difference is. So for me, the answer was no. And I could feel the peace. For me, I feel my inner knowing like in my sacral center, in my gut. And so I felt it there. And I was like, okay, but like I still did what I could to like get back home and like have the skin procedure and all that stuff. And it did come back negative. And so that was just, anyway, evidence of like feeling the difference in my body and then having evidence of like, okay, this is trustworthy. And you can still test it over time. Like, what about this? What about this? And over time, you start to see in your own practice, like, this is trustworthy. It hasn't failed me. And sometimes we get those answers that seem off because there's resistance, because there's a lot of like, sometimes I'll say like, there's a strong mind there that's jumping in and interrupting the intuition because we're so conditioned to hear the mind all day, every day. And we're conditioned to think that this is our source of truth. And like, if we think a thought, we believe it. And it takes a lot of practice to feel the truth and believe it instead. So that's a little like trick of like, ask those yes, no questions, see what they feel like in your body. Ask open-ended questions, see what comes up. Those answers can come through in, as you experienced, Becca, it can be words, it can be you see images, you see colors, you hear sounds or music, or you see a memory, or you feel a body sensation like I did earlier, those tingles. It could be like, just like a sense of knowing. So pay attention to what comes up when you ask those questions and you breathe and you just allow the answer to come, because the mind doesn't know the answer. So it's allowing the mind to take a vacation, have a rest. It's working for you all day long. It deserves a vacation. So that's the process my clients learn how to do on their own. And I also facilitate it for them in that kind of experience that you had, those vitality activation sessions. But ultimately, like, I want to send my clients out into the world having that connection to themselves, having trust in themselves, in their source, and living from that place. Because I can't imagine it wouldn't transform the whole world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If people trusted themselves more, we'd be in a very different situation. And that we could go down a whole rabbit hole of what does trust really look like. But what I want to pick your brain about is, I'll backtrack a little bit. One of the foundational practices I live by and teach is to ask open-ended questions and not look for the answer, because when we come up with an answer right away, sometimes it's our intuition, but usually we need to give ourselves some space to get that. And immediately the gut impulse is to come up with a smart, actual answer, an analytical answer, because that's what we were taught in school, that when you're asked a question, you get the answer and it needs to be the right answer or else it's wrong. And intuition isn't always logical, like what you touched on. But what I really want to pick your brain about is when there is no question. How do you start to decipher those pings and twangs and strains in the body? What wisdom is in the body that might have been labeled as discomfort or disease or, undesirable, that could actually just be evidence or information for us in our life?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would ask the question. I would say, like, what is this intuition? Like, I feel, like whether it's like I feel some like contraction in my chest that feels uncomfortable, like, what is this? And you can even ask, do I need to know what this is? Sometimes the answer is no, you don't need to know, you just need to be with it. One thing I've really seen a lot is for people who, because I've had clients come to me and be like, I don't hear my intuition, like it's not there for me, what do I do? And the answer was, it is there for you, but there are sometimes what happens for us is we go through difficult experiences in life. Like we could label them traumas, but it could be a really small instance just where you had an emotion and it wasn't allowed to be expressed at the time. So if you think about, like, if you've ever had someone tell you like stop crying, huge, huge, huge like opportunity for those emotions that like, and emotions are just energy in the body. So it's just energy that wasn't allowed to move. Energy wants to move through your body. Um, I actually had chronic fatigue syndrome for like 16 years. And I really learned this is like the doctors didn't help me. Like they didn't have anything for me. I'm not saying like don't see your doctor, but the answer for me was I had to feel, I had to like let the emotions be expressed. Um, so when it comes to like, I'm feeling these things, oftentimes start with just being with it. Like, yeah, we want to label it as good or bad, but that's because we're seeing it as a problem. And that's like that's the mind's job, right? Your mind is really good at what it does, which is keeping you safe. Its job is literally to like keep you alive in your body and in your social circles. It's saving you from death every single day. Like it deserves applause. And also, sometimes it looks for problems where they don't exist. And so I'm not saying if you're experiencing a lot of discomfort, don't like seek answers for it. But like when clients come to me with chronic illness things, especially, like I always say, check in with your inner knowing first. Like instead of what a lot of people do is, and I did this too for a long time, was like throwing spaghetti at the wall, being like, I've got to listen to this podcast. I've got to read this book. I've got to see this specialist. I've got to try the supplement. And there at no time was there like checking in with the body and with your inner knowing about what is my body asking for? What does it actually need in this time? Is this even a problem? Like, do I just need to be with it? Like, if you think about, I envision this sometimes like if little me, like 5-year-old me, came up to me and was like, I'm so scared, I'm so upset, like someone hurt my feelings, da da da, would you be like, you're a problem, go away? Like, I hope not, right? So it's a balance of like, you can ask where the sensation is coming from, what it means for you, if anything. But ultimately, you will need to be with it. And that's why I love like offering my facilitated sessions for people, because it provides a safe, finite container for that. You're not just like out floating in the ethers with like, I have these scary sensations and don't know what to do with them. Um, Ultimately, you will be safe. Like your body knows what to do. It's designed to heal itself. But yeah, but we don't have to do it alone either. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's what I loved most about that, because I do have a strong relationship to my intuition, obviously, like, you know, that's the work I do too, but to
Yeah.
have somebody hold me, it, you know, there's nothing bad for me to address because I've done so much work on my own, but also the safety that, you know, I could feel with you holding me. And I'm glad you brought up the inner child, because the inner dialogue, they say usually the inner dialogue starts around age 5, 7, although they've seen as early as, I think, evidence of 18 months inner dialogue in children. But, you know, so many people have shut down to their intuition, their spiritual capacities, because for one reason or another, they were told it was make believe, or they were told that it was in their head, or they were told that it was inappropriate and they were scaring other people. And so I think intuition just kind of gets lumped in there with, you know, make believe. And so as adults, even when it comes up, we decide it's irrelevant or it's just a fleeting nonsense, because that's what we were told as children, many of us. And so I think that it's a relearning and it's a muscle to flex. And the more often you do it, the easier it becomes. And I think with the work that you provide, it's an easy way to start because you're held. And, you know, it invites out the early voice, right? The inner child, because it can be scary if you've received those messages early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I totally experienced that. Like you need to be a certain way in order to be acceptable to other people or be lovable, right? Or just to like be worthy. A lot of us have these like worthiness stories. And that's why like going to your inner voice and your intuition is so, so powerful, because it doesn't have that. It's you without your conditioning. So if you can imagine being like, what's the purest form of me? Like, what's that like me that's like the drop in the ocean that is source? Like if you, and this is how like, because one of the things I noticed too, like I did a whole life inventory when I started this work. I was like, what am I going to be helping people with? Like I kind of knew what directions I was being pulled in general, but I wanted to get more specific. And I looked at what were the deepest and oldest pains of my life. And I noticed one of them was self-loathing. I hated myself. And I, it's weird to laugh about it now in a way, but like I can laugh about it because I don't feel that anymore, because I've spent so much time with my inner voice. My inner voice doesn't hate me at all. Like it all the time when I talk to it, it's like, we just love you so much. Like I just feel it in my body. Like the other day I was like, not even consciously being like, let's have a conversation, but I was just like washing dishes in the kitchen and I could just feel this like love enveloping me. I was just like, this is just where I live now, you know? And that's what the healing process is just coming back to your truth over and over and over until you start to see how real it is. And again, that's why I talk about like living from that place. Because it touches everything. If you like think about the parts of your life that you're most unhappy with, whether it's like money or health or business or relationships or like home, ask your intuition about it and see what it has to say about that. And over time, you'll see that really transform. And it doesn't have to take a long time either. Like I've had clients come to me like in the middle of a migraine that they've had for 3 days and it's gone at the end of one session. So I've had like quote unquote miracles happen like that, but miracles can be really commonplace once we understand like where our truth is.
That's where I live.
Yay.
And it doesn't mean that I live in a bliss, nonstop bliss life, but you know, getting your nervous system regulated, like we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, and being able to navigate your cues and navigate challenges allows space for miracles to unfold. Whether it's, you know, it's not always going to feel happy nonstop, but ease and flow and solutions do show themselves from a place of relaxation and peace. And you know, I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but I also had chronic illness growing up. And I was in a lot of pain through my 20s. And it led me to getting certified as a coach because I was so determined to figure out how to heal myself that I ended up in a health coaching program specifically to get the information. And it wasn't until I was halfway through the program I realized I wanted to be a coach. So you know, I could even look at it that my body got me to coaching because that's truly where I was meant to be. It doesn't always make sense, but, you know, I think that our bodies do scream at us until we're willing to listen. And it can become very normal to freak out if there's a sensation that feels painful if you have a history of illness. And you'd mentioned this earlier that, you know, your shoulder kind of put you on high alert because you've had chronic pain in the past. And so we can get used to what feels scary to us because of the narrative we have about it. And, you know, as you shared with the story with your client with the migraine, when there's a space to not freak out about it, when there's a space to just be with it, it can shift and change very quickly. But the pattern and habit of contracting in reaction to what seems like an undesirable sensation is very commonplace and can become autopilot for people.
Yeah, 100%. I really feel like our, in many ways, our quality of life is dictated by how much resistance we have to what we have. Like, so like I was talking about like the dissatisfactions, the like all these different things where you're just in resistance to what is. It doesn't mean like be okay with it. Like if you're in an abusive relationship and your body's freaking out about it, it doesn't mean be okay with it. It means listen to your body, right? So yeah, I've really found like the more, again, we just like be in conversation with that inner knowing, the more we can recognize resistance when it's happening and notice that we even have a choice about it. Like And I've definitely heard, like, if you think about when people are aging, it's just like, oh, we're just getting to that age, or like everything hurts. It's like, are we? Can we get curious about that? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've been considering as well. The narrative of what aging looks like and what lies ahead, especially as a woman, and starting to challenge those ideas, because what we base normal on in the society medically is actually quite unhealthy. So finding a new measurement, a new scale against what's possible for our bodies, I definitely have a stand behind that.
Yeah. Oh, and that, as you were talking, this is like, again, evidence of intuition. Like, it reminded me of the last time my husband and I were at the grocery store, because it's so funny. People comment on what we buy all the time. And like 80% at least of what we buy is produce. And it's not because, like, I don't know, we're like following some specific thing that somebody said to do. It's just, I really enjoy eating a lot of produce. And the last time we were like in the checkout lane at the grocery store, the lady in front of us turned around and said, "You guys are going to live forever eating like that." We just like, afterwards, like he and I just like had to turn to each other and laugh, because we're like, that's not even what it's about. Like, we're not trying to be invincible or like live forever. We just want to feel good, right? And so yeah, you always have a choice about um how you act on the information that's coming into you. And so sometimes it feels better to not know, and like that's part of the journey too. Like, every part of the journey is okay. So like if it feels too scary to have those deep conversations with yourself, that's okay. Like, maybe the seed is planted today and it comes back around in a year. That's beautiful. So it's not that, like, if you're not doing this, you're doing life wrong. It's like, it's just a thing that's possible. Like, see how it feels in your body.
That's funny that you just said that, because I was just going to say, disclaimer, if you have illness, if you have disease, if you have injury, if you don't like the way you're aging, it's not that anything's wrong with you. You're, bad intuitive, or you're doing life wrong. We've been heavily conditioned, and the world is unpredictable and mysterious. So nothing is 100%. And, we can't always know for sure it's our intuition or our trauma. It's a trial and error, and it's something to, improve your life and enhance your life, but it's not a replacement of doctors and medicine, whether that's allopathic or holistic. But these are tools to add to your basket and to enhance your relationship to yourself and your body.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And yeah, exactly like you're saying, like, we get to choose our tools. And like, I've just found this is the most powerful tool for me. Because sometimes, again, like even with mindset, we can like throw the spaghetti at the wall and like fall in love with something for like a month and then be like, I'm over it. So for me, for whatever reason, like this practice has really stuck. And again, it is a practice, you grow over time. But like one thing that's come up for me, I want to say like a couple weeks ago, was I was getting frustrated with like, I didn't even realize I was putting the weight of perfectionism on my inner voice as well. And I was being like, why isn't it answering me in this way? Why isn't it giving me like XYZ kind of instructions about like this thing I want to do in my business? And I, asked about that, and it was like the trial and error is play too. Like and that's how it's from your inner voice, because my mind would never say that. My mind would say it has to look this way. It has to be, again, like logical and quantifiable.
Yeah.
And it has to be like acceptable to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I was like, oh, I have permission to play. And sometimes that means, quote unquote, like doing something that looks like it wasn't successful, or it didn't put me where I wanted to be, but can you connect with your presence even there and see how that feels in your body again? Like, can you come back to peace? So that's what I am just continually coming back to.
So would you agree that it's an art, not a science?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Like there's there's a process that I teach my clients, like step by step, here's what you can do. But I always say, like, here's the process that has worked for me. Run with it. Like, run it through your own intuition, see what comes up for you. You might develop your own process. So this is not like, I doubt I will ever write a textbook for it. You know what I mean? And the intuition speaks in its own language to everybody. So like, if you look at like the different clair senses, that's essentially what it is. But, you know, for me, like I'll receive body sensations and like seeing images and hearing the words and maybe hearing sounds or music, but I'm not receiving like taste or smell. So like for some people, they might receive that. And people have different combinations. Like, yeah, I think of a client who came to me and was like, I don't hear my intuition. It's not here. And it was because they were thinking it had to come through in a certain way. Kind of like I was just talking about, like, why isn't my intuition like making sense? And it was just because it wasn't using words. Like it really wanted to use images for them. And so that's beautiful and perfect. So yeah, so it's both. It's a lot of an art and it's a lot of a science, but it's an individual science. Like it's your own. You don't have to compare it to anyone else's ever. I find the more I compare my own process or my own anything, business, whatever, to anybody else's, the more dissatisfied I am. So I often find my intuition is just telling me like, come back here, come back here, come back home. And like, this is where your truth is. It's not outside of you. A lot of us are like looking for the answers outside of us in all those external places. Like, again, with like the chronic illness stuff I was talking about before, we can do that in any area of life. So the more you come back home, and I feel like I'm saying that because your inner voice said that when we when we were talking, it was saying like, oh, you're helping people like come back home. So that was really beautiful. So yeah, I could rant about this for days, but that's my rant for now.
And I just got chills. So
Yay.
Before I finish my comment, I just want to run down the clairs for people who don't know. So clairaudience is hearing, clairvoyance is seeing. And for the hearing, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sound. It can just be words in your head, like your own thoughts. And for clairvoyant, it could be that you actually have hallucinations and visuals, but most often it's images in your mind. Claircognizance is just a knowing. Clairsentience is a feeling. And then I can't remember the clair for scent and taste.
There's clairalliance and clairgustance.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think for people with strong senses like this, or highly sensitive people or empaths, the medicine for feeling free and joyful with it is to practice it, to expand it, to not be at the effect of it. So when we are able to step into it and be curious about it, it's less impactful in an uncomfortable way. And what I was going to say in response to what you're sharing so artfully, no pun intended, about the art versus science, is that I love that you were saying don't compare it to anybody else. Create your own data set. Make this be your research. And good scientific studies don't happen in a short amount of time. It's over a long period of time. So let this be your invitation to start your research and let it be, let yourself inform yourself, because nobody else knows what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And your intuition is going to speak, kind of like I said earlier, like it's going to use its own special language for you. Even if, let's say, like I hear some words and you hear some words, the words are going to be the words that we individually need based on, our life conditioning, based on like any traumas we're holding. It's going to give us the medicine we need. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Well, thank you so much. This was a rich conversation. I think that people will get a lot out of it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And if people would like to get a hold of Lorna, she has a Facebook group that I will link in the episode description. And you can also subscribe to her email list. In both places, you'll stay in the loop for future free resources and her paid offerings for those who are ready to go deeper into developing a relationship with their intuition and long-term healing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lorna.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay, thank you for listening and becoming part of this community. If you loved this episode, I invite you to subscribe, share with someone you think would appreciate it, or leave a review. This helps me to learn what resonates with you so I can deliver more of what you want and reach more people who can benefit from this content. If you want to reach me, please feel free to reach out on my website, www.beccaspirit.com. I would love to hear from you, get any feedback, and know what's on your mind. Until next time, take great care.